And now let's talk about the territory that China claims as its own. Taiwan. Taiwan's President Tsai Ing-wen will soon embark on a mission. Later this month, she begins a 10-day tour of Latin America. She'll visit Taiwan's allies Belize and Guatemala and stop over in New York and Los Angeles. The mission is quite simple: retain Taipei's remaining allies in Central America. And the trigger is this: Honduras is shifting its allegiance to China. We told you about this last week. This will leave Taiwan with only 13 official allies. When President Tsai began her term in 2016, Taiwan was recognized by 20 countries. Today, that's down to 13. It's the magic of China's checkbook. It's weaning away Taiwan's friends, so President Tsai is reaching out to the remaining ones.
On this trip, the president hopes to achieve the two goals of strengthening democracy and developing co-prosperity. Deepening exchanges with democratic partners, together safeguarding international peace and stability, while continuing to further the cooperation plan of mutual benefit and common prosperity, pushing forward together on welfare, construction and economy.
The spokesperson says the aim is strengthening democracy and developing co-prosperity. It's an interesting turn of phrase. You see, China's acts of checkbook diplomacy are well known. So Taiwan usually has to sweeten the deal for its allies as well. Let's look at Honduras. Last week, it announced that it would switch diplomatic recognition to China. Just before that, it said it was trying to negotiate or renegotiate its debt to Taiwan. That debt amounts to about $600 million. You see, Taiwan has spent years aiding its allies. Most of them are relatively poor nations. Even for this latest trip by President Tsai, the spokesperson mentioned pushing forward together on welfare, construction and the economy. It sounds a lot like China. It's like both China and Taiwan are using money to win friends. They're competing in Latin America with promises of aid. But to be fair to Taiwan, there's a difference. China's checks come with debt traps. Taiwan cannot do that, even if it wants to. It doesn't have the economic heft to cripple countries financially. And Taiwan has been giving aid to allies for decades. It needs their support for a political statement, if nothing else. It's not like these allies will fight for it if China invades. They don't have the wherewithal. That's where Taiwan's unofficial allies come in, the likes of America. The US officially recognizes Beijing, but it still supports Taipei. It follows the one China policy, but maintains what it calls strategic ambiguity. The US military may be one of the only reasons why China has not attacked yet. And all the parties know this, which is why Beijing is furious about President Tsai's visit to the US. Reports say she'll meet with US House Speaker Kevin McCarthy. Last year, former Speaker Nancy Pelosi visited Taiwan. It was the first such visit in 25 years, and China threw a fit about it. It conducted live-fire drills for weeks around Taiwan. This time, the Americans say there's no reason for China to overreact.
There's no reason for China to overreact. Heck, there's no reason for them to react. I mean, this is something that, as I said, is commonplace and has happened before, will likely happen again. It's personal. It's unofficial. There should be no reason for Beijing to react in any way to this. Again, business as usual here. And we did think it was important to provide that context in light of Mr. Xi's visit to Moscow and all the media attention that is getting, as well as in the context of how they reacted to Speaker Pelosi's. No apologies there at all. We felt that this was important context to be out there, and so we put it out there.
The US and Taiwan are asking China to keep calm. They want President Tsai's trip to go off without incident. We'll keep you updated about how this story unfolds. If you're gay or lesbian in Uganda, or if you identify as a member of the LGBTQ community, you're in deep trouble. Uganda has passed sweeping legislation that criminalizes homosexuality. Its parliament says homosexuality goes against the traditional values of Uganda. Being gay was already illegal in this East African country. Now a wide array of activities seen as homosexual can also land people in jail, even get them killed. But why is Uganda acting so harshly against the LGBTQ community? And what does it mean to be gay in Africa? Also, is there any hope for Uganda's LGBTQ community? Here's a report.
In our country, we will have our morals. We will protect our children. And we are making this law. We are making this law for ourselves. We are making this law for our children. We are making this law for the children of our children. This country will stand firm. And once it passed, I can tell you, Madam Speaker, we are going to reinforce the law enforcement officers to make sure that homosexuals have no space in Uganda.
Homosexuals have no space in Uganda. That was said by a lawmaker. You'd think that such rhetoric has no place in today's time. But this rhetoric is rampant in the country and in fact thrives in Uganda. In Parliament, Uganda's anti-homosexual legislation was celebrated with song and fervour. Lawmakers rejoiced as the Parliament passed laws criminalising same-sex relationships. In fact, even identifying as a gay or lesbian can now get people imprisoned for 20 years. The legislation makes it a duty for families, friends, and members of the community to report homosexuals to authorities. There's a ban on promoting and abetting homosexuality. The law promises to act against the conspiracy to engage in same-sex activities. Perhaps the most radical provision is people engaging in aggravated acts of homosexuality will get a life sentence. That's if they're lucky. If not, they'll get the death penalty. What is an aggravated act of homosexuality? According to Uganda, it's when a person has sexual intercourse with a partner of the same sex or when either person is HIV positive. All but one member of the parliament spoke against the bill. The legislation hasn't become the law yet. For that, it would require the sign of President Yoweri Museveni. But that's a foregone conclusion. The man has opposed LGBTQ rights as a matter of principle. He's also called out the Western nations for putting pressure on Uganda over the issue. In 2013, the president signed a law that made gay sex punishable with life imprisonment. A court struck down that law, but it is now back with a much larger mandate. Life for the LGBTQ community is already incredibly difficult. In recent weeks, they have come under increasing attack. Last month, more than 110 people reported incidents including arrests, sexual violence, evictions, and public undressing for being queer. This month, a teacher was arrested over accusations of grooming of young girls into unnatural sexual practices. And just 2 days ago, the police arrested 6 people accused of running a network that was actively involved in the grooming of young boys into acts of sodomy. Between 2017 and 2020, 195 people were charged for being gay. The near-unanimous support for the anti-gay legislation is reflective of the mood in Uganda. It's a deeply conservative Christian country. Homosexuality is a taboo. The people of Uganda support the latest legislation. And it's not an exception in Africa. Out of the 69 countries in the world that have laws criminalizing homosexuality, 32 are in Africa alone. So homophobia is deeply entrenched. Which is why Uganda's legislation, no matter how radical, hardly comes as a surprise.
Now you can print your cake and eat it too. Researchers have 3D printed a creamy, gooey cheesecake. It marks a step forward in mechanically assembling food by 3D printing. From cultured meat to 3D printing, we have come a long way. It's clear that our kitchens are being revolutionized. And with this cheesecake, the future of food looks sweet. But there are many lingering questions. Can food tech eliminate the hassle of cooking? More importantly, will it be able to solve global hunger? Here's a report.
Sometimes the secret ingredient of food is a 3D printer. What's a 3D printer? It manufactures food products using manufacturing techniques. Food-grade syringes hold the printing material. It's then deposited through a nozzle layer by layer. And the limits of 3D printers are being pushed year on year. Researchers at Columbia University have now taken a sweet step forward, especially in mechanically assembling food. They've printed a 3D cheesecake. It's made of 7 ingredients you can easily find in any grocery shop, like peanut butter, Nutella, strawberry jelly, and whipped cream. This is a record-setting number of ingredients in a single printed food. And as amazing as it sounds, 3D food printing is not a new concept. Pop-up restaurants use it to make food. A startup makes 3D printing sugars. And the tech has even been used to make a plant-based steak. What's different now is that the cake was assembled and cooked entirely by a 3D printing machine, and with a new innovation, laser technology. Precision printing of multi-layered food can open up new avenues. It can produce more customizable foods and improve food safety. Another star of food tech also has similar benefits. We're talking about lab meat. It's where scientists create the recipe in small beakers in laboratories. So the meat comes from test tubes, not a living, breathing animal. It has the taste of real meat, but no skin and bone. The world of food is changing. You produce food with precise nutrient content, count calories, calculate fat, sugar, and carbohydrate contents. 3D printing also makes food faster. So despite the benefits, why hasn't it reached our kitchens yet? Because it's still a work in progress and very expensive. A 3D food printer costs about $1,000, and for some, the idea of printed food may be unpalatable. Scientists say this is not too different from cooking normally, but the analog world of cookers and pans isn't comfortable accepting a 3D printer. There's also a danger of lost livelihood. Advanced food tech could remove more people from the preparation process at every level, from food manufacturers to restaurants and even homes. Regardless, will high-tech food be available to solve world hunger? Unlikely. World hunger is a multifaceted problem. Massive political and social reforms are needed. Plus, this tech may be bad for the environment. We cannot know for sure until mass production begins. But we have an idea. An Oxford study says that cultivating meat could release more greenhouse gases than traditional farming. And we can also look at history for some clues. Every time we've tried to simplify food production, there have been unforeseen consequences. Think about synthetic fertilizers, chemical pesticides, and intensive livestock farming. So maybe the goal for now is to scale down our ambitions. If 3D printing our lab-grown meat can help a community make their own food, it's already a very good use of the technology. But that's not to say that the food revolution isn't coming. Experts say it's inevitable. Once the technology hits the market, it will be difficult to look back. And who knows, maybe we could all have a digital chef in our kitchens.
And finally, it's time for Vantage Shots, images that tell the story. Polish and Dutch fighter jets participated in joint military drills. MiG-29s and F-35s flew over Polish airspace. Meanwhile, artificial intelligence is the talk of the town. In the latest, an AI enthusiast has generated some images. They show historical figures like Mahatma Gandhi, Mother Teresa, Martin Luther King Jr., Albert Einstein, and even Marilyn Monroe taking selfies. Clearly, when it comes to AI, the sky is the limit. And speaking of pushing limits, a Spanish athlete with what is called 76% disability finished a 43-kilometer marathon. Goes on to show that a dream is never too big and never too crazy to chase. And now, images from history. What makes March the 22nd significant? 90 years ago, in the year 1933, Nazi Germany opened its first ever concentration camp. It was called Dachau concentration camp. The horrors that this place unleashed are unspeakable. Its gates were the first to be engraved with the infamous phrase, "Work sets you free." It is believed that as many as 41,000 people perished here. We leave you with these images. Thanks for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.
Y ahora sí, hemos hecho historia. Me he convertido en la primera persona del mundo con un 76% de discapacidad física en lograr una maratón.